2023 is gearing up to be an absolutely enormous year for video games, especially on PC. In fact, this year's release schedule is so crammed full of exciting things to play that it can be hard to keep track of everything that's set to launch over the next 12 months. With the likes of Starfield and Diablo 4 threatening to overshadow smaller yet no less interesting titles, I've decided to make a video highlighting a selection of games you may not have heard of alongside some big hitters you won't want to miss. These are 14 indie games we can't wait to play in 2023. Let's kick things off with a game I still can't believe actually exists. Hades 2 is a surprise follow-up to Supergiant's exceptional 2020 roguelike, and the first sequel the studio has ever made. Zagreus' little sister, the immortal witch Melanoy, is the lead this time around as she embarks on a quest to defeat the Titan of Time. More Hades inevitably means more weapons to wield and more hot gods to chat to, including the Greek pantheon, who return from the original game. There's no firm release date for Hades 2 just yet, but it does seem likely we'll see the game enter early access at some point later this year. Call it wishful thinking, but I really hope that Hollow Knight Silksong finally releases in 2023. This sequel to the sensational Metroidvania Hollow Knight was first revealed back in 2019 and has gained a feverish amount of hype over the last 4 years. It does make sense why. The original game was a well-received indie hit that provided a dense, beautiful and tightly designed adventure that featured a surprising amount of emotional depth. Silksong promises more of what made Hollow Knight so special, with the added bonus of Hunter, the game's nimble new protagonist. Best of all, Silksong will also be available as part of an Xbox Game Pass subscription. What a treat! I'm worried not enough people know about Knuckle Sandwich, mainly because I hadn't heard about it either until I started researching games to add to this list. Basically, Knuckle Sandwich is an Earthbound-inspired RPG that blends gorgeous 2D pixel art with lo-fi 3D models and boasts a unique combat system that sees you completing WarioWare-style minigames in order to inflict damage on goofy enemies. It looks absolutely brilliant. One of my favourite things about indies is their ability to revive a specific style of game that failed to find mainstream appeal. Case in point, Sorry We're Closed, which is basically Killer 7 meets Paradise Killer with a touch of Resident Evil thrown in for good measure. This is pretty much my perfect game, marrying the surreal visual stylings of Suda 51 with classic survival horror combat systems and mechanics. As Michelle, you'll explore twisted environments in an attempt to prevent your own death, meeting a cast of bizarre and unusual characters along the way. I want to play this right now, like immediately. Cheers. Cadence returns in Rift of the Necrodancer, a spin-off rhythm game by the developers of the brilliant Crypt of the Necrodancer. Deviating from the original game's dungeon crawling, Rift is instead a more traditional rhythm game that sees players hitting notes, symbolised in this instance as enemies, in time to a funky beat. Elsewhere, the game samples other rhythm game favourites such as Rhythm Heaven and even Punch-Out, secretly one of the best rhythm games, offering a trifecta of musical minigame styles for you to groove your way through. I played a demo for this at PAX last year and thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I've heard folks describe Terra Nil as the anti-SimCity, but I'm unsure if I'd call them opposites. I think they work better as a duo, actually. Two games that together deliver a singular narrative about our collective effect on the planet we call home. Whereas your time with SimCity, or any other city builder for that matter, is primarily spent destroying natural landscapes with things like roads and schools and big statues of llamas or whatever, Terra Nil, on the other hand, is about tidying up your mess after you're done. And by done, I mean gone. Like, oh shit, we ruined the planet and now it's little more than a desert-covered husk kind of gone. It's your job in Terra Nil to restore nature, pumping water into vacant riverbeds and cultivating flora until a once barren plain is lush and thriving with life again. Then it's time to pack up your things and leave it all behind. After all, haven't we all done enough damage as it is? At first glance, the Plucky Squire appears to be a gorgeous 2D isometric adventure game that takes place across the pages of a storybook sat upon a desk in a child's bedroom. That is, until the end of its debut trailer, which sees the game's diminutive hero leap from the pages and onto the desk itself. Surprise! The Plucky Squire is also a 3D isometric adventure game that will allow players to leap between two distinct visual styles, transitioning seamlessly by jumping into objects scattered around the real-world environment. What a fantastic idea for a game. I can't wait to see what other surprises it undoubtedly has in store when it launches later this year. Storyteller is an inventive puzzle game that tasks you with creating stories that lead to specific outcomes. To do this, you're given a set of characters, objects, and locations that can be dragged onto storyboard panels. Experimenting with placement can lead to different results. A king could become a vampire, or a butler could murder a detective, depending on where in the story they're introduced. It's an intriguing premise, one with a huge amount of potential. I think it's probably fair to say that Jala is having a bit of a rough go of it. Not only has she been forced to move back home, but all of her exes have banded together in order to take her down. Don't you just hate it when that happens? Cue a number of over-the-top turn-based battles that pit Jala against her ex-partners, Scott Pilgrim style. But that's not all. Thirsty Suitors also features acrobatic cooking minigames, rad skateboarding sections, and judgmental family members to disappoint. What more could you ask for? I am properly excited to play Dreamsettler. Giddy, even. I watch its announcement trailer every other week like an actual child. I hum the sax solo from it to myself while I'm, peeling carrots. Is that normal behaviour? No. But listen, I really loved Hypnospace Outlaw, so forgive me for being pleased it's receiving a sequel. Set a few years after the original in the early 2000s, Dreamsettler introduces a brand new sleep time service that will grant you access to yet another alternate reality version of the World Wide Web. Presumably one stuffed full of warped music, bizarre brands, and relatable, lovable people. You know, like Hypnospace. Oh, and I can't talk about Dreamsettler without a cursory nod towards Slayer's X, Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer, a retro-inspired FPS based on a character from Hypnospace that's also due out at some point this year. If you haven't played the demo for that one yet, I would really recommend you give it a try. It's properly daft in all the right ways. Speaking of daft, Angerfoot is a game about kicking weird dog men in the head and shooting lizards wearing sports coats with an Uzi. You are a weird mutant bloke with really muscular legs whose sole purpose in life is to do terrible things to horrible creatures that live in grungy apartments that seemingly stretch on forever. You smack your soul into a bunch of throats until you beat the level, pausing only to pick up a gun to commit a different, worse kind of murder. Its limited demo was maybe one of the best things I played last year, so I can only assume that the full release will be a guaranteed good time. I think about Bomb Rush Cyberfunk a lot. I just think the world needs a game where you grind around a city in a pair of rollerblades, evading the police, tagging walls, and listening to funky futuristic beats. Sega seemingly isn't in any rush to revive Jet Set Radio anytime soon, so thank goodness Team Reptile is on hand to pick up the slack. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk may be a spiritual successor to the Dreamcast classic, but that doesn't mean it isn't jam-packed with the same Sega blue skies you'd expect from something riffing on one of the coolest games ever made. Very excited about this one. Dordogne isn't even out yet, but I genuinely think it's one of the best looking video games I've ever seen. I mean, come on, look at this. A watercolour come to life, Dordogne tells the story of Mimi, a young woman who visits the home of her recently deceased grandmother. There she discovers a series of letters that transport her back to memories of her childhood, exploring the vibrant French region of Dordogne. 23 years ago, just at the turn of the millennium, American rock band OPM theorized that if you die before you wake, well, at least in heaven, you can skate. But what if they were wrong? What if this spiritual skate park they speak of doesn't lie behind the pearly gates, but instead in the smouldering pit of the underworld? That's sort of the premise of Skate Story, a game about skateboarding your way through the underworld in order to swallow the moon. Your prize for gobbling up a big slice of lunar cake? Your freedom. Important, I imagine, for a crystallized being made out of glass and pain. Skate Story looks violent, stylish, and incredibly cool. Sign me up. So there we have it, folks, 14 upcoming indie games we can't wait to play in 2023. Let me tell you, whittling this list down to just 14 entries was an absolute nightmare. There are hundreds of really cool indie titles set to launch this year, so if there's something you think I've missed, absolutely let me know about it in the comments below. If you're interested in hearing about more games that are set to launch this year, make sure to check out our video detailing the 14 biggest games coming to PC in 2023. Link in the description. For all your PC gaming needs, make sure to check out rockpapershotgun.com, and I'll be back very soon with more daft videos about computer games. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.